The C-19 pandemic, in combination with the lockdown, has caused an uncertainty as we have never seen it before. And despite all the misery that it caused, I still believe that this crisis will help us to shape a new form of collaboration in post-corona times. My name is Miriam Hartness. I'm a behavioral economist and a workshop facilitation expert. I do believe that we can change the world with one workshop at a time. Because it is in times like these that we have the responsibility to use our facilitation superpowers in order to enhance collaboration. Because that's what facilitators do. We make collaboration easy. And this is suggested by the French origin of the word, facile, which means easy. So I came up with a framework that I call the 3P, that I use for facilitation and that I will now use to apply to the opportunities so that organization can go from surviving to thriving by relying on purpose, people, and process. Let's start with number 1, the processes. The corona crisis has become an amplifier, shining light on everything that doesn't work in an organization. All the broken systems, undefined processes, unclear communication channels, and opaque decision-making systems. If we rely on processes that are not defined well, very quickly individuals become bottlenecks. Imagine Peter. Peter in the office environment, he would ask for documents or ask for updates by asking colleagues, going in the coffee corner, or having lunch with friends. Now that he's in the remote world, he will reach out via phone or email, and usually it's the one person who gathers all this information, or very often the office assistant. Let's call her Susan. Imagine Susan receives all the emails and phone calls for minor problems and questions from all the Peters in a team or even in a department. Very quickly, she feels overwhelmed, and she might even suffer from frustration and burnout in the end because she can just not cope with all this workload. On the other side, imagine someone like Julia, who is too shy to really reach out, to ask these questions, to make the phone call or write the email, because it's so much easier to just ask one colleague who sits side by side to her in the office. This may lead to loneliness. If nobody knows about each other's work, this might lead to redundant work and therefore a lack of progress. In a remote work, everything we do has to become very explicit to get the work done. Whatever remains implicit will never get done. So we can grasp this opportunity of improving the workflow, reducing the amount of emails, and reducing the meeting time by redefining the processes according to our needs. Very often, what managers try to do is to fix the problem, define the processes, and do the work for their teams. What facilitators do is recognize that we cannot fix them, we cannot fix it, but we can empower and enable the teams and the groups to define whatever works best for them. So we would organize a workshop as facilitators, where we invite all the teammates to come together to think about the processes that actually need. And guess what? Most of the teams, they know what is not working. They know all the broken links. And I'm pretty sure that they also have great ideas on how to make it work. So by bringing them together and building on each other's ideas, they can define whatever they need and whatever works best for them. And the good news is, there's something that behavioral economists call the IKEA effect. We become very attached to things that we have built ourselves. That's why we usually don't get rid of the Billy shelf that we have built with our own sweat and our own strengths. So if we bring the teams together to let them build whatever it takes they need, then most probably they will also be more interested and more motivated to follow through with that. And then it would make sense to have regular team retros. So with very simple frameworks like stop, start, continue, or sad, glad, mad, you can see whatever has worked in the past week for them and what needs to be adjusted. The team just needs a safe space in order to experiment and fail forward, to learn from their mistake and adjust the system bit by bit. And finally, less is more. We very quickly get overwhelmed with the abundance of tools and platforms at our hand. And most of the time, we don't need all of that. So really stick to the minimum that makes collaboration and communication in the team easy. So for instance, sharing one mural board that everyone has bookmarked so that they can go back, see what has been discussed, add their comments, add their own experiences from the week, so that you can really build on each other's ideas and on each other's experiences in a very transparent manner. And the good thing is, this meeting room, this virtual workshop room on Mural stays open all the time, and the sticky notes won't fall off the wall. So you can combine synchronous and asynchronous work to really keep momentum and to give each team member the sense of meaningful progress that will make them motivated to show up to work and giving their very best. Number 2, people. Our most important resource and still the most complex one. And I don't believe that we burn out due to too much work, because many of us have been there. Heavy workload, sharp deadlines, and still we are thriving. We're full of energy because we know why we are doing the work and we have a sense of meaningful progress. What in turn burns us out are toxic cultures and micromanagement. When blame or shame are in place instead of constructive feedback, where competition rules instead of collaboration, and where control and fear in place instead of trust and safety. I do see the opportunity in this crisis that toxic cultures cannot survive in a remote environment. Because as much as managers want to control situations that are uncertain, because they want to make sure that goals are reached and targets are met, there is no way to control people when they are working from home. As a facilitator, we very quickly learn that there are only 2 things we can control anyway. It's ourselves, including our mindset and how we show up, and the process that we put in place to help groups to go from confusion to clarity to action. All we need to do is to make sure that we have the right people in place. Everyone needs to have a role in order to contribute. If someone doesn't have a role, very quickly they start disturbing the meeting or workshop. In my sessions, I know these people, I knew them before, who would always say, we've done that already, we've been there, this won't work anyway. In most cases, these are the people who are not sure why they're actually in the meeting or in the workshop. Otherwise, they would contribute with their expertise, as they have. So in order to create an environment of trust and safety, where people will feel responsible for the work they do and the solutions they develop, they need this trust and safe environment. And what we do in the facilitation world is we make sure that everyone feels seen, heard, and held accountable. And this is actually, in remote meetings, quite easy, as long as you turn the camera on. This helps you to really see each other in everyone's environment. You can be human. You can keep the mask down, as you have to if the hairdresser was shut down anyway. This gives you the opportunity to really show up. And the screens, when you all turn your video on, as soon as you put on the grid view, you see that everyone is taking up exactly the same amount of space, independent of their role, their hierarchy level, or their responsibilities. On the other hand, you can use the speaker's view to raise the self-awareness of some speakers who might not be able to keep themselves short. Actually, seeing themselves in full speaker's view, they might be aware of how much space and time they are taking. Alternatively, you can use the grid view and maybe agree on just a hand sign to signal each other when it's actually time to move on and to let someone else speak. In workshop, we make sure that everyone feels heard by always starting with a check-in. It's not woo-woo, it's not touchy-feely, it has a very clear purpose to be there. Because as early as someone speaks up, the more likely they are to speak again in the following conversation. And then they will contribute. Also make sure that everyone is self-responsible of what they need in order to get the information. As I mentioned earlier, we have to be very explicit. So if there is someone complaining or whining in a workshop, I learned from Helene Kauper on the podcast that the best way to make these people self-responsible is to actually ask them, what do you need? Do you need an action? Do you need a decision? Or do you need information or share information? This will help them to really take responsibility and step forward. Finally, as facilitators, we learn to listen, listening to understand instead of reply. And I was actually quite surprised when I realized that many managers and team leaders have never considered the opportunity or possibility that they don't have to facilitate a meeting that they're inviting to. By rotating the role of a facilitator across team members, we'll put everyone at the same place at some point. Everyone gets in charge of the time boxing, will feel responsible, and the leader in turn has really had space to engage in the conversation and to listen what is being said, because he or she doesn't have to keep the time, make sure that the tech works, and that the agenda is actually run through. And finally, even when leaders sometimes are not prepared, as I experienced with one person that I closely work with, whenever he wasn't prepared for a meeting, he would feel responsible to fill the time and to give information, to speak, in order to give them the impression that he was prepared. Instead, what would have been more impactful is to start with a check-in and just ask, okay, what do you have to share about this topic? I would like to hear from every one of you. And then we'll start to dive deep into the conversation so that he really understands what he has to decide on. So facilitate meetings like a facilitator by making sure everyone is heard, everyone is seen, and everyone is accountable for being there and doing the work. Number 3, purpose. Mary Alice Arthur once said in a podcast interview that purpose was the silent leader in the center. If we know why we're here, who we are, and what we're here for to do, no crisis can get us off road. And this time gave us opportunity to admit that we don't know, and that's okay, as long as we create this environment of safety and of purpose. You can help teams to find purpose in a workshop environment. That's what we do all the time. And a very easy exercise can be to ask everyone, as a result of what I do, of what we do, blank. This is an exercise you can do synchronously and asynchronously, and then connect the dot and see what is it actually that keeps you together. As a facilitator, we are so used to navigate in the unknown. We prepare an agenda and a plan that might not work out, that usually doesn't work out. And that's okay, because we have a process that we follow and a toolbox that we can apply in order to help the groups to get whatever they need in this moment. The most important, though, for us is to remain authentic and to sit with this discomfort of not knowing. We lead by example, we show how it is to get out of the comfort zone, but we speak last. And this will enable the group to find the solutions and to go all the way to make the work happen, and it will foster collaboration. So I hope that these 3 Ps of the facilitator's superpower will help you to shape management in the post-corona times through focusing on purpose, people, and processes. I interviewed over 65 world expert facilitators on what it is that makes workshops work and collaboration stick. Visit workshops.work to check out the podcast, or if you need a shortcut, there's an ebook with summaries of each of the first 60 episodes. Thank you for listening.